Good afternoon and thank you. As you've heard, I'm an ovarian cancer survivor, and so I'm here to share a part of my story with you today. So just looking back, I was at the time 56 and I was working full-time and working in a local government role, enjoying life with my husband and 2 young adult children. Then I started experiencing cramping on one side of my pelvic area, using my bladder frequently and carrying some additional weight around my waistline. I went to my GP and I asked for his opinion and his guidance. So following an internal examination, he referred me for a vaginal ultrasound. This identified a 12 centimetre cyst on my ovary. But there was nothing sinister about the cyst at this point, and additionally I'd had a blood test for my tumour marker, which was the CA125, and it was 38, but again not causing great suspicion. I was referred to a gynaecologist specialising in endometriosis due to my history. I felt confident, I was fit and I was healthy. Laparoscopic surgery was performed to remove the cyst and the ovary. All went to plan. Once again, no concern. It's now Christmas was just on our doorstep. I was discharged home. Then I had that phone call. The specialist's voice was sombre. Are you sitting down? I'm sorry to tell you, but your results have identified ovarian cancer, and it looks like it has spread. That moment, I felt my body had let me down. My world stopped turning. I felt a sense of difference, isolation, and I was really scared. My mum died from cancer when I was only 5, and it was really hard growing up without a mum, and I wanted to still be a mum to our 2 adult children. I was then referred to a gynecology oncologist. The next period, it was really difficult to focus. I felt like I had no control. So much information to absorb, appointments, tests, and waiting for results. My pathology was retested to identify the type and the grading of cancer, and if further surgery was required first and chemotherapy. The result was an aggressive grade 3 ovarian cancer. It was determined to progress with further surgery first, followed up with 6 rounds of chemotherapy. But there was a glimmer of hope because there was no further cancer detected at this stage. My gynecology oncologist arranged for me to return to surgery again 3 weeks later for the removal of that ovary, the other ovary and the fallopian tube, and to see if I would require a hysterectomy and check the lymph nodes and take samples from the omentum. The surgeon deemed that a full hysterectomy was not required, and now I was waiting on the pathology results. 5 days after, the results was my cancer was contained and no further evidence of cancer cells. I feel really fortunate to be able to capture this deceptive disease at such an early stage. Next was to recover from surgery and prepare for chemotherapy. I went into protection mode thinking I needed to protect the family, but they were wrapping their arms around me, of course. But I was careful that I focused on the facts. I was careful what I read and who I listened to. Preparing for chemotherapy was emotionally difficult. Watching the nurses put on their goggles, their gloves and their gowns for their protection, but these toxic drugs was actually going into my vein. I was the other person at the end. With the commencement of chemotherapy, some patients may experience an allergic reaction. I didn't escape. My body felt like an atomic explosion had gone off. Alarms went off. The staff run. My husband was terrified, witnessing me go blue and purple. I couldn't breathe, but it was all over in a moment. It seemed like forever as I received an injection to counteract the reaction. After resting 30 minutes, my body is challenged once again. My body accepts the drug now, and the treatment progressed. 3 weeks later, exactly, my hair started coming out in handfuls. I hated looking at myself without hair and my puffy face. I wasn't as brave as some women. No one saw my baldness except for me. It was an emotional roller coaster ride, waiting for my blood count to return to acceptable levels and to progress to the next chemotherapy session. Chemotherapy then continued for the next 4 months until I started experiencing pins and needles on the soles of my feet, my fingertips and my lips. I notified the hospital. As a result of that, my oncologist recommended that the 4 chemotherapy treatments that I'd received, that probably would be sufficient. I really struggled with that decision. I felt like I hadn't completed my journey. I discussed if there was another option with my medical team and so I could complete those last 2 infusions. My request was considered and discussed with the medical committee, and it was approved to complete them. The last 2 infusions, but minus the drug, causing those side effects. My medical team were my champions. They were supportive, they were willing to listen to any of my concerns. Now to return to work. This wasn't an easy process for me. Moving into this phase had its challenges and sometimes facing unrealistic expectations, particularly from my manager. It was emotionally difficult and my physical and emotional health was fragile. Physically, I looked different with hair loss. I had a round shape to my face and I'd put on weight. It took me a further 12 months of negotiations to arrange for my position to reduce to 32 hours per week over a 4-day week with reduced responsibility. But this enabled me to continue work and assume some normality again. An important aspect of my journey was, as I said, to focus on the facts and try and bring positive aspects to my life each day. My wonderful family and friends supported me through every facet of my journey. This journey took me up and down emotionally, sometimes to the depths of depression. But keeping my medical team informed and sharing my feelings and asking questions helped me navigate and traverse my recovery. Following my experiences, I looked for opportunities to contribute to ovarian cancer with making a difference for other women. Today, my focus is promoting awareness, being an advocate for women and a consumer on several hospital committees. Being able to contribute to outcomes and involved in planning is so important, and as patients, I think we do have a very unique perspective. Even though I have been cancer-free for 6 years, I still maintain my regular checkups. Life is precious. We need to take charge of our own health. Ovarian cancer is not just a deceptive and deadly disease, it's one that relies heavily on early diagnosis. My GP listened and he acted upon my symptoms, initiating diagnostic investigations with appropriate referrals. If I wasn't taken seriously and acted upon, I may not have been here to share my story today with you. Thank you.